is Mainstream Metaphysics with your host, Nick Newmont.
And welcome to Mainstream Metaphysics. I'm Nick Newmont. It is another hot day in Southern California.
Hello, my name is Justin Formanek. I happen to be in the same space as Nick over here in his wellness center.
It's the first guest to ever introduce himself without being prompted. Way to go. Welcome, Justin. Yes, Justin, I think, is the last of all the practitioners at the Newmont Center that has not appeared on this show or Audrey's show. So overdue, but
definitely overdue,
welcome,
yes.
Welcome. I want to say, go backwards for a moment. Last week, the response to the show that I did with Carol Allen in the Vedic astrology and the cliffhanger that we left you with last week will be revisited and resolved next week. So tune in next week because Carol Allen is back here live in studio, and we are going to look at some events down the road that some of you may or may not want answers to. But you asked for it, so we are going to do it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's great to be back here on Mainstream Metaphysics. And as you know, on our show, we do a lot of things that are out of the box, okay? And we are going to do some things tonight that have to do with energy work that we haven't really touched on before.
Okay.
And that's where you come in.
Absolutely.
And those watching have known me all these years. Yes, I do a form of energy work called sentient healing. And if you come to the Newmont Center and have a session with Justin, you'd be signing up for massage. Yes. However, there's a lot more. But before we get into that,
okay,
let's the audience get to know you.
Yeah.
Where are you from originally? What have you studied?
Absolutely. Okay. So, hello, everyone. I am from Ventura County. I was born in Watts, actually, in 95, and I was adopted. So, one of the things that had occurred is I was adopted. I moved out to Camarillo, and I lived there growing up, going through high school and everything. Went to college at Moorpark. I had started with a focus in game design. I realized, it's quite a shift to go from game design to where I am now, and I realized that it wasn't for me. It was lacking. There was something that just wasn't clicking for me. So pursuing what I wanted, I ended up going towards dance. Became a dance instructor for a few years, and that. Wow. In the end, led me to become a massage therapist. I got into massage because of a close friend of mine having a injury on her back, and she was an amazing dancer. You could watch her forever, and I was like, I want to help. I want to be able to make her, help ease the pain, help her heal, and get back to doing what she loves. And so I took a massage. I started going to massage school, and I found a calling for it, and it was 2018 that I started that journey. Mm-hmm. Then I got offered a position to become a dance instructor down in LA with World Champions, and I took that opportunity, packed up, left for LA. That imploded, which is fine because it led me to go back to massage school, and by then I had started really just kind of focusing on me, focusing on what I really want to do and what was the callings that I found that brought me joy and I could see myself doing in the long term.
Sure.
So doing massage led me to energy work. There were times where I'd work on people and they would always say their muscles never originally felt like there were times where their muscles would not actually release, but they were like, I feel lighter, or I feel like weight has been lifted off of me. And then 30 minutes later, I'd feel heavy. I would feel weight added on. And so that was before I really started my energy journey. And so it took a massage therapist that does Reiki healing that saw me and said, oh, you just took all of that and let me show you how you're going to, just to learn how to ground yourself. And she helped me through it. And I'm so thankful for her because that was my first conscious experience to energy and actually feeling it be physically pulled off of me. And so I thought that was really fascinating and I want to know more. So as I continued my massage journey, I started paying attention a lot more to what I could feel from people when their tension, where their tension was, how it was, if it was physical, or if there were times where I would feel an emotional pull, if I would feel their restraints or things that are not fully letting go. And so that led me to becoming Reiki certified and just very much curious about the energetic body and everything that coincides between trauma, massage, stress, emotional distress, and just understanding like how we hold ourselves in the day-to-day, how we hold ourselves months at a time, and what we do to better take care of ourselves in the long run.
Wow.
There's a lot.
How many levels of Reiki did you study? How many?
I got to level 2. I practiced it every day for a year on myself and others, and I never got the 3rd certification because I felt like my personal teachings were lacking, and I didn't feel confident in being able to say that I was a Reiki master or a level 3 until I've met someone that I feel like I would be able to really give me that foundation to proudly and confidently be able to be like, all right, well, if I'm going to teach someone, I will be able to give that the same level of attention to detail.
And having good teachers is really important.
It absolutely is. It's one of the biggest things.
You know, I was very fortunate in all the different things I've studied, having incredible teachers.
Yeah.
And at our center, we offer tons of classes. And I really, it doesn't matter where people study, find good teachers.
Yes.
Because it will make a difference.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's not just how a teacher teaches, but it's also their experiences of the years of having done that. That, you know, giving them the ability to share,
Yes.
you know, that.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to doing the work, now, how often do you take your hands off? I mean, if people expect massage,
yes.
I'm just acting
no, absolutely.
like a client.
Yeah. So when people get a massage from me, one of the big things is I spend about, if they were to come to me for like a full hour session, it would be 50 minutes of genuine, intentional massage, focusing on de-stressing the body. However, at the last 10 minutes, I do my best to get them, walk them through mantras, get them intention setting, and making sure that we take our time to visualize our energetic body and just slowly pulling away at those stresses that we're holding, going through the 7 physical chakras. And I always ask, well, do you accept my energy when I start?
Interesting. Do you describe yourself as clairsentient?
I never did, but I feel I've always had a knack for it that I just don't, I've never pursued in that sense, to give it a term. I've always had this unconscious pull towards things, and there are times where I connect with others and it's at an emotional level that I've never, there's no reason I should know the information I do, but it just comes to me where it's, I'll feel the trauma, or I'll feel the stress, or I'll feel the blockages, and I'm just reminding them like, hey, we're going to just work through this, and we're going to be present, and we're going to take our time.
Right.
And it's just being able to create that space for them to be able to heal and grow.
Even though it may not come into play in the work that you do, but are you clairvoyant or clairaudient?
I do, yes. There is a level of it that I do feel like I do have. So when I do work on people, there are times where I genuinely will see where they are physically, and there it's like, okay, we're going to take some time, and because I will see where they are, where it is being held on the body.
Now, when you, and I do the same thing, so when you get the person on the table,
Yes.
and you get into their aura, which as soon as you get in the room you work in at our place, you approach the table, you're in their aura.
Yeah.
So how far away from them do you have to be, or how close do you have to be before you sense, you know, what's going on in their body?
I'm usually about anywhere from 3 to 6 feet when it really starts. So if it's so I take my time with it. I do like to have a very thorough understanding of who they are or what they're doing, and I just want to understand their physical body before I start working on them, because that helps me a lot to understand their emotional body as I work on them as well. So it's knowing what they do throughout the day will tell me a lot on where they generally will hold their stressors from repetitive movement or things, and then when I'm working on them, parents generally tend to hold their stress in certain areas, women generally tend to hold their stress in certain areas, and men generally tend to hold their stress in certain areas. So being conscious of those understandings and then knowing what their day-to-days are like helps guide me through helping them.
Okay, so you just teased the audience. All right, so we're going to back up here because
absolutely.
This is great. Okay, so where do women store their stress?
So there's a few discussions on that, but one of the biggest things that we discuss when we go over energetic balancing is women generally hold their stress in the hips, in the sacral chakra, and men generally hold it in their gut. So thus there's a term of man gut that we used to joke around about in massage school, and that's because when men get stressed, it all just kind of bellies forward. They do not generally, and physically and emotionally. So like they generally do not hold fat in their arms and their legs, but it all goes straight to the stomach because that's where they have their doubt. That's where they have their self-confidence issues. That's where they feel those blockages because they don't have a way to verbalize it personally, and so it just gets stuck and holds itself and solidifies. So it's really important that they do take care of that.
And also the stomach, the third chakra, the solar plexus, is the conscious mind.
Yes.
What we want, what we choose, what we think, what we try to control.
Yes.
Where the sacral chakra, the one that's at the navel, as you're speaking out women, that is the most complex chakra that we have because it's all forms of intimacy, abundance, the sex organs, reproductive organs, self-worth, self-esteem, guilt, shame, remorse. I mean,
and well, so talking about that, especially for the second chakra, one of the big things I talk with a lot of my female clients, because they always ask, why is it always my hips? They ask that, and I say it's because at a young age we're unfortunately conditioned for it. For you especially, at a certain age, starting who knows how long, it's you're too much this, you're too little this. There is no winning. So it's for me to create that space for them to be able to release that, to be able to feel their hips actually open, close, move forward and back without feeling shame. It's for them to be able to have a space where they can embrace their femininity without it feeling like I am invading their space of that femininity. So.
Yeah, and people are sensitive.
Yeah.
The person that's on the table is sensing you, me, simultaneously. So the client has to feel comfortable with you. I mean, you most of the time, you're literally putting your hands on them.
So I actually am really glad you brought that up because I was discussing this with a physical therapist the other day, and what we had talked about was tickle responses, which is one of the biggest things as a massage therapist to be conscious of. And the reason why is because that's a panic response, is how I've always viewed it. It's not whether or not something happened there, it's just your body is panicking to the stimulus. That's as simple as that. Right. So somewhere unconsciously you're uncomfortable, and so you're bringing that out. So now it's my job to come in with the intention, come in with creating that space, working through that energy, making sure that you feel safe and calm and you're able to actually relax, where if I were to touch someone on their side just because I'm massaging through the ribs and they tickle at first, I have them focus on their deep breaths. I talk them through it. I explain like, hey, this is my hand, slow and steady. And oftentimes I can work around those responses that are generally a panic response.
Well, one really great thing about you, Justin, we've seen you around our center a lot through the years, is that you always have this calm demeanor about you, which is really good.
Thank you.
Because when you're in a therapeutic environment like ours, there's a lot of different people coming and going. People have all kinds of issues that are going on, and you just have this way about you that just puts people at ease. And the other great thing about you is every time I see you in there, we pass in the waiting room or the center, it's like you have a smile on your face.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that's really huge because people don't want to come into a therapeutic environment and see a bunch of sourpuss-faced
absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's one of my personal things of actually, I will not work on you if I'm not at 100. I will reschedule it entirely if I know that I'm not able to give my all, be present, or create that space, because at the end of the day, especially for massage, I am in your energy. I am in your space. I am directly connected to your body, physically, emotionally, mentally. There is a component to that. It is an intimate experience, it is a very beautiful experience that I love being able to create for people. And so for me, I go in with a calm demeanor. I go in with the intention of just creating that space, what it is for you or what it is for Audrey or what it is for anyone that comes to see me. It's very specifically catered to what they need.
Sure.
And so it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a space to grieve, whether it's a space to just relax, whether it's a space to overcome whatever it is that happened to them. I am there for them. I'm there for you. So that's how I've always viewed that. And so I want to come in calm, and if I'm frazzled or anything, and I know that it's going to take a minute, I'll delay a service, or I'll delay my appointment and be like, okay, let me collect myself, let me make sure, because I want to be able to give the best and be able to smile and give a smile to them. And I always joke about the massage days, but I want that where you kind of go and you're like, oh, what just happened? Wow, my life changed.
Right. Well, one of the things that I tell my level 1 students is, if you're having a bad day, either cancel the appointment or fix what's going on with you.
Yes.
Because you can't take your stuff into a session where energy is involved. Percentage-wise, about how many of the people you work on fall asleep in session?
At a certain point, it was about 70%.
Wow.
I had a streak where almost everyone kept falling asleep. I've had people drool on my sheets. I love teasing them about it. They will fall, cradle. Just fully, and I can just hear the snores. I'm like, they're out. Okay. That's great. I love that I love that, because that's also one of the biggest compliments you could ever give to me. Because I can't remember the term for the part of the brain that is always alert for when you're trying to fall asleep, but for that to fully feel comfortable to shut off enough for you to just go into fully that delta wave where you're just out, that's a huge thing for me.
Yeah, they trust you.
Yes, and that's I will forever be thankful for that trust.
So do you notice a difference? So if a person falls asleep, do they relax even more? So if you're working on a challenging area, that area lets go a little bit more because they're not conscious?
It sometimes does. Sometimes it'll actually fight a little bit because they're drifting back and forth between sleep and not, and from that trance state of the delta waves to actually being alert. And so that it can be jarring for them to suddenly feel the hand shift. So if I know they're asleep, I will slow down a little bit on my techniques just to keep them in that state. However, one of the things I have to be conscious of is just to make sure that I'm giving the adequate amount of pressure, or more importantly, that I don't disconnect and then reconnect at a different place, because that will generally cause them to tense up whether or not they're fully conscious, because you go from feeling sensation one area and then for it to shift, you're going to naturally be like, what happened?
Right.
So so it's being aware of that, and I'll adjust my techniques according to that as well.
Well, this is a very random question, but let's say a person has some back issues and they're thinking about maybe going to a chiropractor.
Yes.
Okay. But in the work that you do, the way you do it, have you had people say that after you worked on them, it loosened up so much that they didn't need to go get an adjustment?
Quite often, yes. So
wonderful.
I do my best, yes. So I look at the entirety of whatever the issue is if they come to me for therapeutic reasons. If you're coming to me because you have pain and it is radiating, and say you've been to the chiropractor, you've been to 3 chiropractors, and it's still in pain, I'm going to say, okay, well, what did they do? I want to understand what they've done so far, what has been consistent, what has helped you, and what hasn't. I want to understand everything about your back pain. Is it constant? Is it temporary? Does it only happen when you lean forward and lift your left leg when you reach down? What is it? And so that's how I approach it for a physical side of things. And so when I'm working on it, I love that because there's an interconnectedness in the body. It can be felt in the back. However, it can be caused by 5 or 6 other things. So you might feel it in the back, but it could be because your hips are tightening too much that they're pulling down on the low back. And then what happens is it creates the cycle, which causes your hamstrings to tighten, which then causes your hip flexors to tighten. And then now you're in this wonderful grip where it's like, I can't undo one thing without undoing everything. So now it's a giant beautiful knot that I have to get out of, an intricate knot on different parts of the body. And there is a level of understanding of that. I have to know how many ways can it be getting pulled and what has already been done and what needs to be done to figure out if it is a muscular issue or if it's a skeletal issue.
Right.
Because if I've done everything possible to hit every muscle in that group and it has not gotten better and it actually got worse, then that tells me that it's most likely you're going to need to go to a specialist for that goes beyond my scope of practice. And then I would be like, hey, this is just, I've done everything I can physically do. Here's someone that has much more knowledge in that sense than I do.
When people have, like, I don't think anybody goes to the type of practitioner that they need as often as they should. I think that's a general statement in today's world.
It's
people being busy, but ideally, in fact, let me say this: when I do energy work on people, I can sense things. I sense a lot of things, but sometimes I tell people it's like you need to go be physically manipulated.
Yeah,
you can tell that so much is stored, and what's really interesting too is that sometimes people need touch. Sometimes people are just maybe on their own or whatever, and you can tell that in the energy field they haven't been touched, appropriately hugged, massaged, anything
absolutely
like that. So
on that note, one of the big things a colleague of mine who does energy work and I will talk about is that you don't need, like, yes, Reiki is it's not meant to be heavily touched. It's meant to be a very light, gentle, barely noticeable touch, if at all.
Right.
But there are times where you can bring out energy by going in deep. And there are times where it's so deeply embedded that it is trauma being stored in the body. So you need to release that muscle to allow that trauma to finally start flowing through. Like a perfect analogy is actually like a car crash. So the impact of that, if you were to look at the crumple zones of the car and how it spreads and everything, you still felt that crash. You still had that jerking motion, but that energy went elsewhere, but you still felt that impact. That impact did not just go through you and leave. It's still in there. You felt it deep in there. So that's why when people get into an accident, they'll feel something later on. That same type of trauma is felt when someone verbally attacks you. That same type of trauma is felt when somebody says something that hurts your feelings or says something to demean you or says anything or does something to you. It's felt, it's stored, and now whether or not if you've done the work, that's amazing, but oftentimes we're in that fight or flight. We have to just keep going, and so we don't take that time. So then it stores itself, and then muscle starts to tighten on itself, and then it stores itself deeper, and it goes in deep to the point where it's like, I'm not getting any better. I'm getting massaged all the time. I'm going to sound healing. I'm going to this, but there is no release. Why is there no release? And it's maddening. And so that's when I see that and I say, okay, just take a moment, be present, and I want you, whatever you feel, you are valid in that emotion, whether it's happiness, joy, rage, confusion, laughter. I'm not going to judge you on that. I am here for you. I am going to create the space, and whether it is a brick, a rock, a pebble, we're just going to take a piece of that and set it aside so you can start digging through what is deep in there. And that's how I approach that when it's like, hey, we're doing stuff and like I can feel the energy shifting, so now it's time for us to embrace that a little bit. Let that energy flow, let it actually out. And then that's why I am so big on having my breath work at the end and saying, hey, just be present in your body right now. Let go of all the things that no longer serve you, and remember all your worth and all your blessings and everything that you're thankful for.
Cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Absolutely.
So we're talking to this point about, the structure of the body, the muscles, tissue, and all that. But because you do sense things, so what about, because I see a person holographically expanded. So, like, for instance, if I'm working on someone's liver, I'm not working in here. I'm working way out here because I see the expanded body.
Absolutely.
So how much do you work on liver, spleen, kidneys?
Absolutely.
Energetically, of course.
So I have not done any training for that since yet. I would love to, because it very much fascinates me to better understand and grasp that. I will do focuses more on gut health. Actually, there are times where it's like, hey, I can tell that you're holding on to things, and hips. I will do heart. I will do throat. Throat is actually one of my favorites because I like to actually have them go through speaking exercises because it tells me what it is that's blocking them. So there'll be times where I'm not touching their neck or throat in any way. My hand is hovering above it, and I'm just saying, hey, breathe and open your throat. Just let it open and let your voice go. Just take your time and release and let your voice out, and I promise you, it's going to get you through to speak your voice, speak your truth, and set your boundaries as you need to.
About how often would you say in a situation like that could there be a birth trauma?
I actually am not familiar with birth traumas,
Okay.
but I'd love to expand on that. For me, I know that a lot of them are heavily because they're just told to be quiet at a young age.
Sure.
They're very much told, like, you're too much, you speak too much, or you did this one thing. Or it's that hesitation that starts at a young age, and so it's working through that and reminding yourself to let go of that self-doubt that thinks, like, I can't say this. It's not something I'm allowed to say.
Sure.
So...
Yeah, it's conditioned. I mean,
it is.
Going way back, I mean, there was that children should be seen and not heard.
Oh, my gosh.
So
I
wrong.
forgot about that, but
That
I understand.
was said all the time.
Yeah.
So how often, again, we're going to use that word should.
Yes.
How often should a person really get a body work done?
Absolutely. It varies from person to person. If you have chronic issues that you're starting to notice actually get better through body work, and I'm talking about any form of body work, go regularly. If you're able to do it, go regularly to once a week. So if you can do twice a week, great. But the end goal is to get it to where it's more of a checkup, where it's like, hey, I haven't seen you in 2 months and my body's starting, I can feel it happening again. Can we do a reset? I like to see my clients every month to every 6 weeks if possible.
Okay.
Just because it allows me to keep track of what they're doing, how they're handling stress in life and any life events that are occurring. And I keep tabs on, like, if they have injuries, if they've got some past traumas, and I check in on all of that stuff. I make sure that they're taking time for them emotionally and physically, and I'll remind them throughout that month of, like, hey, have you drank enough water? Have you done this? Like, have you just set out to sit in nature for a time? And so
Sure.
I very much spend my time for that too.
When you do work on people, how much can you tell / improve, like, circulation?
I actually really love that because I can tell a good amount. I have a few people that have poor circulation, and so I'll see their fingertips will be a little purple. And
Ooh.
So by the time I'm done, they've got the color back in. Their hands are warm again, and like they can tell that difference. I actually do lymphatic drainage for that purpose. I do have some post-op clients that I want. I like checking in on them, making sure that they're taking care of themselves. So it's very great to actually feel that difference because the muscle relaxes, it eases, and I can feel it. I can actually feel when the tension release. There's a few different parts that have clear signs, but like on the calves, I can feel if I start, they're usually rock hard because we never think to do anything about the calves. We don't like doing anything about the calves. They're a painful part to work out. They're a painful part to stretch. But by the time I'm done, it feels like there's blood. It feels like there's movement, and like it's like, oh, I can move my feet now. My ankle never felt this loose. What's going on? So yeah.
Well, and there are people that say that the calf muscle, the second heart.
Yes, I have heard that, and it's really fascinating because there's a lot that was the first time I discovered interconnectedness was through calves. I'd work on someone's calf, and they said, "Why does my shoulder feel better?" And I'm like, and this was before I really started studying interconnectedness. I'm like, I've heard this happen before. I've heard it can happen. At that point, I didn't have an answer, but it's just there is a connection. There is something that pulls and connects every part of the body to another part, and how in depth it goes is always so fascinating because it's an intricate web that I'm like, hold on a second. There have been times where I'm like, this might not make any sense, but I'm about to work on your shoulder, but my foot hurts. Again, it might not make any sense, but this is what your body is telling me. Your body is saying, hey, I've got something going on here, and I'm internalizing it here, but it's happening here. I need attention.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's cool. And how about like circulation going down into the legs?
Oh, I love...
Like a lot of people have like a fluid buildup in there.
Yeah. So I love seeing... it always breaks my heart when I see it, but I love working on it because I've seen edema actually just lower entirely, where I'll have someone that has some swelling and I'll watch it just slowly start to drain and lower through the body as they start flushing it through their lymphatic system. And I love that because it's like, it's a physical representation of like, oh, we're letting it go. We're actually moving it. We're getting things going, and we're getting some blood pumping, and we're bringing that sense of urgency to the body. Your brain is like, hold on a second, let's bring it through.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, the body has its reasons for everything it does.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And it we really don't know our bodies as well as we should.
No, there is a level of disconnect from our brain to our body, and our emotion and the emotions to our physical as well. There are times where you can tell someone's stressed just by the unconscious moves they have.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, the way you hold yourself, the way you present yourself can very much indicate. So I love. It's one of the things we were told in massage school was to people watch, because you could see who's stressed and why. Well, I can see when there's a new mom because they're hunched over and their hip, they have a light, their hip is a little out because they've been holding the baby the entire time. I can tell who is who's stressing about bills because there's this almost frustrated like sense of defeat when they hunch over, so
interesting.
And that one's like, hey, just come see me, we'll work it out, and I promise you it'll work itself out in the end. Like, it's just to take a time to disconnect so you're not stressing, overthinking what could possibly be a simple solution.
Right.
So
what would you say is the number one complaint that people bring to you?
Everyone will always complain about shoulders and neck, and however that is partially due to our society.
Sure.
We live in a very anti-standing up properly society at this point. Everything is dependent on our phones. Everything is dependent on driving. Driving affects your posture so atrociously, and so it's years of here.
Right.
Years of... And so it's going to cause strain, and my dance background actually taught me a lot about that as well, because this is upwards of 20 pounds eventually, 20 to 40 pounds on your back, and holding that, texting on your phone for hours at a time,
right,
it's going to it's going to take its toll, where you're
right.
going to feel your shoulders will hunch, and then what happens is the muscle will shorten or elongate to the point where it's like your posture is permanently altering because you're doing it for hours at a time.
People don't realize how heavy their head really is.
No, they really don't. And that's always something too of like, I'll do light decompression, and I'll just do some light traction, and they're like, oh, I didn't realize like there was so much neck that I could have moved. I'm like, yeah, it takes some time to remind you of that and everything. So
oh, sure. And a lot of people, when you were doing this, referring to driving, a lot of people to this day don't understand the source of carpal tunnel.
Oh.
They think it's this. It's here.
Yeah, it's the repetitive movements. It's that same movement hours and hours at a time, and it's actually the number one cause of massage therapists ending their jobs. I believe it's one of the higher causes. So it's you hear about it often of like keeping your hands healthy, and so it's like I always try to make sure I'm doing something a little bit, bringing some blood flow, trying not to do the exact same thing every time, just to help them heal.
Sure. Since you handheld, so what is? And I'm talking about doing good quality work. What's the max people you can work on in a day?
For good quality work, I can do 6.5 to 7 hours of massage in a day.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. However, that's with the understanding that I'm doing only 25 to 30 hours worth of work on people. So if I were to split that up among different days, I could do 5 hours every day if I want, or I would do 4 hours of 7-hour massages and say, all right, guys, my hands are currently hurting after that 4th day. I can keep it going, but that quality will start diminishing.
Sure.
So it's understanding my limit on that. I learned it very early on because I did a 10-hour day when I was in school.
Ow.
My hands were radiating. Like, it felt like they were vibrating, emanating energy and emanating pain. I was like, this is a new feeling, and I don't want this again.
Right. Well, in any practitioner, no matter what, we have to take care of ourselves.
Absolutely, yes. So my big thing is if I have smaller days, for me a small day is 5 5 hours. That is
Right.
like, okay, that's the perfect amount of time. I can work on plenty of people, and then I still have time to go and do things and take care of me and take time for me. But if I'm pushing it, then I'll be like, all right, I can go to 7. There are a few people that, like, if I had a lighter day in the earlier part, then I'm like, okay, I can go to 8 if I really need to. But I would be gauging that as I do it, because anything
Sure.
beyond 7, my body will be like, hey, you're gonna have to sit out soon because you are pushing it.
Right.
So, and that's for anything you do. I mean, that's one of the reasons why any of my clients that do desk work, I'm like, hey, do you set a timer? Please tell me you set a timer, because you're working 6 to 12 hours sometimes. Are you setting a timer?
Right. No, most people just plow right through.
Oh yeah, I know. And that's part of societal's conditioning of, like, you have to keep going. You work until you drop. Like, that's not something I want to do.
Well, even when I'm doing hypnotherapy on people, there are some people that really hold their breath,
Yeah.
don't breathe right, and I tell them, every 15 minutes, push back from your desk and take a few
Yeah.
big, deep breaths. Just remember to breathe.
Yes.
Release that.
I have
So-
to tell them the same.
Yeah, because people hold their breath.
Oh yeah.
So when you're working on someone, and this is what happens in the energy work
Yeah.
that I do, there's a period where I will go out of the room and just let them have the space to just be.
Yeah.
And we call it marinating.
Okay.
In our work, so
Yeah.
they're just being with
I really
themselves.
like that though, yeah. No, I love that, and I think I'm going to try and implement that a little more in my own practice for the ones that are very much more energy focused. I usually tell them not to rush when I finish a service. I want them to sit and be present in that moment and just kind of stay there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them to get up immediately. If they have to, I understand it, but I want them to be present physically and emotionally and be like,
Sure.
okay, I'm okay. It's going to be okay.
When we finish a session of the energy work
Yeah.
that we do, we have some do's and don'ts.
Yes.
Like the rest of the day, because it is energy work, no alcohol, no caffeine, no sugar, hydrate a lot. Do you give them do's and don'ts?
I remind them to hydrate. I always tell them to if they have time, to do something at the end of the night for them, to whatever that looks like, for reading or just taking time, listening to some meditation. I always try to keep it to more of the holistic
Right.
side of things. The other thing is if they have to go back to work, that they go understanding that it's going to be a different feeling.
Right.
Because I don't want them to go back to work, especially if I'm doing a very energy intensive day on them, because otherwise that's going to shift their mindset entirely, and then to go to a hustle and bustle, I'm in fight or flight, is
Right.
going to undo everything I did. So
And another thing with people too is there are some people, I tell them, please, when we're done, please don't get on your phone immediately.
yeah,
Wait.
that one I do need to be better about, and I will admit that. But I definitely should remind them, like, to avoid the electronics for a bit, because
Right.
that stimulates the stimuli in the brain and everything.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Now, when you said brain, I was going to ask about this.
Mm-hmm.
So how much work do you do on the head
I
itself?
would spend so much more time if they did not. Most of my clients are women that usually come in after getting the hair done, and so they say, don't go near my hair. But
Oh, man.
I can't control that. I love doing scalp. I love doing brain. I have a few TMJ clients, so I will take time for working through their stressors, because that helps prevent their migraines and helps prevent the headaches. So I
Right.
love spending. I could spend honestly like 30 minutes working on someone's scalp, just massaging their head. I love it.
So on a physiological level,
Yes.
what is stored in here? We talked about the shoulders, the neck. and
Yeah,
all that.
absolutely.
So what's
I've always viewed it as honestly your faith and your belief in your higher self, your ability to connect to and disconnect from your physical and let go of your ego is stored in the
Right.
in the brain. And the reason why is, I mean, our crown chakra alone, our third eye alone, are the crown chakra not necessarily being a physical chakra. I don't
Right.
necessarily view it as a physical chakra, but it is physical, and that's in the sense that it can be viewed, but it is not physical in the sense that you can technically connect it to the body, because it's not meant to connect to the body. It's meant for you to connect to your higher self, is how I always viewed
Right.
that. But your third eye being your intuition, your ability to see through what is and isn't there, is directly connected to your brain. It's directly connected to your ability to see through your ego, see through other people's egos, and see through what is reality and what isn't. What we perceive as reality is coming from the third eye. Right. So that starts at the head. That starts at the scalp. And that's how I've always viewed that. And it's like, I want to take time for that. I want to make sure that we are taking time to disconnect and actually connect to our higher selves. So.
Right. Yeah, and the crown chakra there's actually two levels to the crown chakra. There's a lower vibration, which is process, patience, and perseverance.
Okay.
Which is our psyche. I use a lot of the P words because the crown chakra is purple.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. I love it, though. It's such a beautiful color.
It is. And then the upper vibration of the crown is peace of mind, life purpose, and personal identity, as in who am I, on a much higher level.
Yes.
And that's why the crown chakra is the most esoteric of all the chakras. Physiologically, it's connected to the pituitary gland.
Yes.
But it is very lofty as it's up there. And of course, the third eye, as you said, that's the perception filter of reality.
Yes.
I ask people, are you seeing reality, or are you seeing things through a muddy windshield?
Yes. No, absolutely. And I think that's something that I always make time to actually do a little bit. If I can, I usually place my right just to give them a little bit of a difference in perception. So I'll place my right just above, right on their third eye, and just have them take a few deep breaths if I can, just because it's so important to clear that and actually let go of our perceptions, because we live this life and we live our life viewing it as a honestly black and white all the time, and and we forget about the gray sometimes. And so I want to remind them, like, hey, it's time to take the filters off sometimes and like actually try and look at it through a different lens.
Sure. And then also, and I'm interested in knowing how this affects people when you're working on them. We know that with the third eye being such a sensitive chakra, that anyone that does a lot of drugs or alcohol taints the third eye, and it becomes like I wear contact lenses. You take that lens out and it's in the air for 15 seconds, it begins to shrivel and dry, and destructive things that we put into ourselves will warp the third eye.
Yes. So I have two clients that are drug prone is the best way. And their perception has always been fascinating to me, because I know I take it almost like a grain of salt, because I understand the way they view it is very skewed and and almost I like your way of describing it. I view it as they're looking through broken stained glass.
Yeah, it's another.
It's absolutely, there is no different. There is no, and it all looks the same to them, and it all makes sense to them. But unfortunately, the glass they're looking at is so broken and so jaded and so cracked that it's not cohesive. It does not make sense. And so I do like to try and take my time to kind of help clear up what I can from that.
Sure.
Try and bring them back to what is possible for their normalcy.
Sure. Yeah, otherwise, I like the way you describe it, because then that broken stained glass becomes like a kaleidoscope.
Exactly.
And
it doesn't show itself immediately. It shows itself in intervals. It'll be times where they can kind of see through it clearly, and then all of a sudden there is no connection. There is no cohesive thoughts through it, because their perception gets skewed again, and it's shattering.
Yeah. So and it's hard to convince people at times.
Yeah.
That no, that's not really what's happening. This is what's happening.
Now, on that point, because how much do you deal with in regards to mental disorders, if you don't mind me asking?
A lot. Now, here's something to share. So it used to be, as energy workers, it was pretty much about the aura, the chakras, and approaching things on a very spiritual and esoteric driven way. Nowadays, in fact, I have so many different classes that address, because people that come to us are maybe they don't want to go to a doctor, they don't want to go to a psychologist. So I have a class called The Psychology of the Chakras, the Physiology of the Chakras.
Absolutely.
And the aura does show disturbances that represent some kind of condition, trauma, or psychosis.
Yes.
So I work with this stuff.
Yes. So I'm very glad you brought that up too. So I don't say don't go see a doctor, but
exactly.
because legally I'm not meant to diagnose. I am not someone who can diagnose. I will always be clear about that. However, there is no one pill fits all, and that is my issue with Western medicine in that sense, because it feels like a one pill fits all is what they try to do. And when I'm working on them, I'm like, this might not work this time, but the next time we're going to try something different, because I'm going to try everything until we find what does work for you.
Well, it's so, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
It was so fascinating you would say it like that, because recently Audrey and I encountered a situation with, let's just call them supplements, not Western medicine, and there was too much a generalization about dispensing.
Yes.
Quantity and all of that. And, individuality is really huge, because everybody's body is different.
Yes.
You know that. You work with bodies every day,
Everybody's
all
body
the time.
is so vastly different, and I love it.
And just as the outside of the body is different and the tissue is different, the inside workings.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
It's as simple as you could have a food sensitivity that I don't have, or vice versa.
Absolutely.
And people say, "What, you only eat red peppers?" No, because they don't feel good.
Yeah, no, right. Absolutely.
So we have to be in your world, my world, so much more discerning.
Yes.
About what we do and how we do it.
Yes.
Because it is individualized.
It's very much so, especially for your line of work and my line of work. Creating a space for someone is not as easy as, let me just create this room and we're going to work on you. It's not that. It's one of the big things we talked about, I talked about with my mentor in massage school. We discussed your intentions for massage. It's felt. What your intentions are when you're working on someone is felt. So if you're coming in from an intent, so when you're creating that space and you're not, and I've talked to so many of my clients that have gone to cookie cutters that have cookie cutter therapists where it's like, all right, we're going to do A and B because A and B has always worked, and if you don't like it, well, too bad.
Right.
And that breaks my heart, because I am very much like, all right, I'm going to do A, B, C, and if A, B, and C clearly aren't working, we're going to move down to G and H, and then we might go back up to D and E and just see what works.
Right, exactly. And that's why, like Audrey is more of an alternative kind of therapist than I am too, as a hypnotherapist. Yeah. And it's you just can't go into the DSM and go, this is what's going on with you, and this is how we're going to treat.
Yeah, not at all.
No.
The other thing is one interaction will not tell you everything. It's not. Everyone has their story. And some people's stories might be short, some people's stories might be very long in depth, and with so many curveballs that you didn't see coming, and you can be part of it or you can't. It's in the sense that, like, you can be present for them or you can just shut them out, and which case they'll see that and they're not going to come back to you.
Right, exactly.
Not at all.
One of the things, in business, the number one reason people do business with someone is because they like them.
Absolutely, yes.
The talent will take care of itself.
Yes.
And one thing about you, Justin, I've known you for a few years now, is that you have something that really can't be taught, and that's called bedside manner.
Thank you.
People, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And there are times I've witnessed students and people have come through, and it's like, no, we gotta dial it down a little bit here, because you could be an incredible worker, but you could also be let's call the approach aggressive.
Yes.
That can be damaging.
Yes.
And
I do see. I know what you mean. Yes.
Yes.
So I was, and I when I decided, and I asked myself, like, what kind of therapist do I want to be, and how do I want to run my business and create my own community for my clients and everything, I asked myself, do I just want to take anyone? Do I want to be aggressive about it? Or do I want to just create the space, and if they and I vibe, or they heard about me from a friend, or someone I worked on was like, hey, I heard amazing things, then that's what I want. And to do that, I asked, what does that mean for me? Like, I don't want to be seen as aggressive or and damaging in that sense, because it's very much like, for me, I do this because I love it. And the thought of like not doing this, or the thought of like anything happening to my hands, I'm like, that would break my heart. So I will always come from a place of love, and the intention is, I'm here for you because I love doing this. And so I'm very thankful that the bedside manners are seen.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. As we're getting through time here, please tell the audience if they would like to contact you, have a private session with you.
Yes.
How do they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So you can get a hold of me through my cell number. Am I good to say it?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. Yeah, so you can get a hold of me through my cell number, which is 805-586-5934. That's my personal number. If I'm not in a session or I'm not driving, then I will reach out to you at my earliest convenience and everything. You're free to call me and leave a voicemail or text me. I have an Instagram. It's J for You Healing. That's all spelled out, JAY for you, FORU, YOU Healing on Instagram. And then I also have an email address, which is J Formanek, but that's just the letter. J Formanek at jformanekmassage@gmail.com, which is my last name, FORMANEK.
Wonderful. Yeah, and if you're looking for someone that does incredible massage, but is also very sensitive and has a very deep awareness of what's going on with you internally and externally, then Justin is your guy.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely, because even, again, as we said earlier, even before he would put his hands on you, he's already sensing what's going on.
Yes, very much.
Do you ever ask your clients? I do this, but it might be different for you. Some people like to talk a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you ever ask your clients, "Don't tell me anything yet"?
There are one or two times where I'll do that. There are some people that I'll see and I'm like, all right, I got you. That's all I say is like, all right, I can already see what's going on. I'm gonna have you lay face down. I want you to just let go, and you don't have to say a word. And so I do have that every once in a while. It's like, and especially if I get to know you to that point, and if after like you've come to see me a few times and I still have to give a rundown, there's something there's either you've got a lot of life curveballs that keep happening, or I'm not giving you that adequate care, because after I've seen you 3 or 4 times, I should be able to say, all right, are we going over the past, or are we going over something new? If it's something new, okay, we'll do a quick brush over, but my goal is getting you right back onto that table to start working on you. Because
ethics is so huge in what we do. Do you ever get to a point with certain clients, and I'm asking this because I have done this, and say, like, I can't help you?
Yes, absolutely. I have, I definitely had the first instance of that happen about a year ago, and it was very much, it was heartbreaking for me because I care deeply about all my clients.
Right.
But it was very eye-opening of, like, again, setting that boundary, which will only make you and your clients respect you more, because it's so important that if they cross boundaries, or you're going through and it's the same issue every time, and you're giving them homework and you're doing everything you can, and they're still, I'm sorry to say it, but if they're still miserable and you're working on them and you're still miserable after a session with them, you have to cut them. In the sense that, like, you're not doing anyone a favor. Send them to someone that doesn't mind that. Send them to someone that is okay with them as a client, or send them to someone that might be able to better help them. Don't have them wasting their money and time with you if you're not doing anything to better their life, and vice versa.
Sure.
That's just kind of how it goes for that. And I have no problem doing that anymore, because I've spent time with people that have drained me, and I'm like, why am I doing this still? It's not worth it. I'm slowly becoming miserable, or I'm getting burned out from this, and I don't want that. And I don't want that for my client, and I don't want that for any practitioners.
And there also could be the time, too, that maybe they need something else, too.
Yes,
maybe they need to go to the
absolutely.
chiropractor.
Yes.
And they're not doing that.
Yeah, and if I do see that, I will tell them, like, hey, I'm doing everything physically. You still got your pain is not getting better. Your emotions are not getting better. I'm gonna send you to Nick, or I'm gonna send you to Michael.
Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna send them
Dr.
to Mike.
McGuire,
Yeah, they'll be able to give you a better understanding because it's going into their scope of practice, which is. One is much more emotional based. One might be a little bit more. I love acupuncture too in its own right, because it has so much energy work to it. It has the Eastern medicine practices to it, and I love that. I just don't know anything about it, so I don't talk about it.
Right.
So
yeah, and that's a whole different realm.
Yeah,
You get
exactly.
into meridians. And all
exactly.
that.
I know a little bit for meridians, but like it's just a surface level, so it's like I can't speak on that. So I'm going to send you to someone like, hey, go see him because he's amazing, or go see my chiro because they're a soft tissue specialist, but they'll still check they'll still do all the adjustments or check you for any misalignments because that might be going on, things like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And again, what you said in the beginning, how long have you been doing this?
I started it in 2018. I did not become official until 2021, 22.
Yeah, it's not a lot of years, but you're really a veteran at what you do. I mean, you've really grown into it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And absolutely. And one last thing. So to do the kind of work you do, to be embracing energy like that, you must be on some form of your own spiritual path too.
Yes, I love that. So my spiritual path is very much ever evolving. I have yet to really feel like I've settled down in my spiritual path because I went through Christian initiation as an adult. Actually, in my high school years, I got baptized in the Catholic Church. I went through the whole shebang on that, and I was very blessed to go to such a progressive church because it wasn't very strict in its conservativeness that we know for Catholicism. But for me, one of the things that the pastor said was, don't be afraid to look at religion of any kind because there's some truth to it, because it's just man trying to comprehend something that goes beyond their understanding.
Sure, it's well put.
And so that immediately, like that will forever be in my brain of like, I want to know. And so I want to connect to my cultural roots as because I am Guatemalan. And so I want to learn about the pantheons for Aztecs, and I want to learn like the cultures and the prayers and things. And so it's things like that. And I'm very much, I just want to create I want to pursue it, and I want to understand it, and I want to grow more and let go of my ego to understand and better grasp this world.
When I became a hypnotherapist, because I was doing psychic work, and there was a frustration that people wouldn't grow, wouldn't make the decisions. So my mantra as a hypnotherapist way back then was giving people their life back. Okay? And so what is sort of your mantra intention for, the people that come to you?
I would say I will create a space for you. And it'll always go down to what I said with, we're going to move that wall. We're going to move whatever it is, whether it's one brick, one stone, one pebble at a time. And we do not rush, we do not force, and we move at your pace.
Well, and that's great, too. Because people are only going to go as fast as they can anyway.
Yeah, and you can't force it. You really can't. You have to create that space, and you have to just be patient with them for it.
Don't you just love the clients that come in and they do this with energy work, too?
Yeah.
And they'll go, because I'm gentle,
Yeah.
And they'll go, no, just go for it, whatever it is. And it's like, no.
Yes.
We're not going in there drilling for oil.
No, yeah. I'll tell them, too. I'm like, hey, I'm going to show you real quick what happens when I go deep. And they'll flinch. I'm like, I don't want this because you're going to fight me. So we're going to take our time with it. And I'll warm you up and we might go a little deeper. But right now, this is your body is telling me I cannot go any further.
Right.
I will fight you and we will not get anywhere. and I have no problem telling a client that.
Yeah, a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
Because we want clients to leave feeling good.
Yes.
That's the bottom line.
Absolutely.
And you want them to come back, too.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, you have to give them some type of enjoyment for that.
Exactly. Look, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Come back again
Yes.
and see us.
Yes.
Again, tell them before we close the phone number, how they can get a hold of you.
Contact me by phone, whether it's a call or a text. That's 805-586-5934.
Wonderful. And if you'd like to get a hold of me for anything you see on any show, Nick Newmont, you can call the center at 818-865-8770. And next week, please tune in because Vedic astrologer Carol Allen is back, and we are going to get into some very meaty, weighty topics. We are going to take on the predictive side of events that are coming up. So please check us out. And as always, you can rewatch these on YouTube or on my Facebook page. And we'd also like to say thank you to the man behind the camera, Ed Hunt.
Thank you.
The operator of Conejo Valley Talk Radio. Anyway, everyone, thank you for watching. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And as always, everyone, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. I'll see you next week right back here. Good night, everyone.